Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope, my name is Anna. I live in Seattle, Washington, and this is my channel where I talk about knitting and sewing and crafting and making of all kinds. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my sewing journey, which sounds kind of serious, but it is not serious. It's just want to talk to you about the stuff that I've made over the past few years as I've been improving at my sewing, and just kind of talk to you about how we got here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of story on my background in sewing and making, and then I'll start talking you through some of the things that I've made over the past like 2 to 3 years as I've been sewing a lot more seriously. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I guess to start, I have been sewing for a really long time. I learned when I was a kid. I was probably, I don't know, I think the period of time when I was sewing the most when I was a kid, I was probably like 7 or 8. And my mom taught me how to use her machine, and I would use her scrap fabrics to kind of just experiment and sew things for my dolls. Mostly I had American Girl dolls, still have them. And I made them a lot of clothes. That was like my favorite thing. I would sew them little clothes. I even made them a little quilt one year. I don't think I actually quilted it, but I sewed the squares together and did the binding and everything. I think my mom probably helped me with the binding, but yeah, so I learned how to sew when I was very young, knew how to use a machine and a serger, and I've kind of been sewing on and off ever since, not like super seriously, but I remember I sewed, my mom and I together worked to sew me a dress for like my elementary school graduation, and then I think the next time I remember doing a big sewing project was when I was in college. I went to stay with my mom, and I wanted a duffel bag, like a weekender duffel bag, and we went to the fabric store, I bought fabric and put it all together, kind of like drafted it ourselves and designed it, and I still have it, and I'll put a picture of it here for you to see. It's great. I really like it and use it still. So yeah, I've been sewing for a long time and kind of had like a basic sewing knowledge. I wouldn't say I was like particularly skilled or that my sewing makes were like had a lot of finesse. And so I would say like as in my adult life, I have a sewing machine. My mom got me a used sewing machine at a thrift store, I think maybe around the time or just before I got married. And I used it for like making pillow covers for my couch, or I guess when I really started like using my sewing machine pretty frequently was when I started buying a lot of vintage clothing and I needed to tailor it a little bit. So there was a period of time where I wore a lot of like pleated trousers, and I still have them and really like them, the style on me, but they were often too long because I'm like average to short. I'm 5'4", or like I think it's 160 centimeters, so like not super tall, and a lot of the times these trousers were a little bit short for me. So that's when I learned how to do blind hems, which just watched a video and practiced and figured out how to do blind hems so that I could hem my pants and so that would still have the nice like look of a good tailored pant. Sorry, I'm dog sitting and Pepper is sneezing at the cars going by, but I may put a little clip of, or I'll put a picture of Pepper, my friend, here. Goodness gracious, are you okay? Okay, I'll put a picture of Pepper so you can see her cute face. Anyway, I was doing a lot of like tailoring, of like fixing the length of my pants or like moving buttons, just like mending things was mostly what I was doing at that time. And then I guess I started like wanting to kind of experiment more with making clothes. So I made some dresses based off of patterns, but they didn't really turn out very successfully. And I think it's probably because I didn't really understand how to match fabrics appropriately with patterns. Lay down and I'll pet you. Lay down. Lay down and I'll pet you. Yeah, you gotta lay down. Okay. She's very needy today. Yeah, I didn't really know how to match fabrics with patterns. I remember I tried to make this dress out of like a percale cotton bed sheet, which it was a purple gingham, and I'll show you it. I have some stuff made out of it still. It's just too stiff of a fabric to really be used for what I wanted it to be used for. So that was like a kind of a failure. I tried to make a dress and the pattern wasn't quite right for what I was imagining, so that didn't work. There were just it was like early tries that didn't really work. So that was like my early kind of things. I just didn't I understood the mechanics of sewing, but I didn't understand how to make what I saw in my mind come to life. I just didn't have the skills or the ability to I knew kind of the mechanics of what I needed to do, but I didn't know the details or the techniques that I wanted to know to get to the level of finesse that I was looking for with my sewing. So I guess that I was just kind of, doing repairs and stuff until 2020 when we were all stuck at home a lot. And this was when I was starting to knit a lot more, and just getting more into the idea of sustainable fashion and making your own clothes and just finding ways to fill my time. And I decided I had a dress that I had bought at Zara, like a fast fashion dress that I really liked the fit of. And I wanted another one, but obviously they didn't have them at Zara anymore. And so I was like, oh, I can just make this. So I bought a bed sheet. Again, it was it was too thick of a weight of cotton. And I traced out the pattern on some wrapping paper and kind of figured out a way to make this pattern. And the first dress I made did not turn out well. And that's this dress. I didn't really understand that I needed to gather the skirt layers to make them lay nicely. I just kind of eased it in and it ended up being a lot of pleats. So as you can see in this cutaway, like the skirt is really triangular. The fabric is too thick. I've never worn this dress. I knew it was wrong from the beginning, but there are a lot of things that I'm really proud of about it. Like the button placket is really nice, and like the collar honestly looks pretty good. It took a couple of tries for me to get the bodice right, but like through trial and error, I was able to make this dress that like is a functional piece of clothing. It's just not very cute. And then I used that same pattern that I had drafted to make several other dresses. So the next one that I made, I think, is this white one, which is probably my most successful dress from that era of self-drafted tiered dress patterns. I made it with a bed sheet. All of these are made out of like bed sheets. They're made from bed sheets that I got from thrift stores. And I don't know why this one was the most successful. The skirt is a little bit tapered, and it also took some trial and error because I had to the lengths for the tiers that I had cut were a little small, so I ended up having to add a panel, but I'm proud of the way that I did it. I did it kind of like so it was in the back and you can't really tell from the front. You may be able to tell in the cutaway. But yeah, it's like I still wear this. I've worn this dress quite a lot. I still wear it quite a lot. I think it's not perfect. I think the neckline could lie a little bit better. But the puff sleeves are like not too puffy. They look nice. And overall, like I'm pretty happy with this dress, and I do wear it quite a lot. I think I might want it to be just like a tad bit shorter. It's pretty long, but beyond that, like it's a great dress that I do wear a lot. I also made this blue one, which I don't love as much. I think it's a combination of the fabric, and the neckline doesn't lay right. I tried to go for a square neck and it just doesn't lay quite right. It's like the shape of the square neck isn't great. And the way that I bound the neckline doesn't look great. It doesn't really match up in one of the corners, and like the sleeves I think are a little bit too big. I like the length on them, but I think the volume is a bit much. So like this one was also fine, and I have worn it a few times, but it's not my favorite. I made a yellow one that I don't have a video of that has buttons down the front, and the binding again is not great on that. But other than that, that dress has turned out cute. So I just like kind of experimented and made a couple of these dresses with this pattern that I drafted from a dress that I already had, and some turned out successful and some turned out less successful. But it was a really good learning experience for me because like with each dress, I tried something new and figured out a technique that either worked really well or didn't work really well. Like from the green striped dress to the white dress, I figured out about the ruching for the skirt. And a lot of this was just by like trial and error. It wasn't through watching YouTube videos or tutorials or anything. A lot of also calling my mom, but yeah, I think that was like a really fun kind of experimenting time for me. And I will mention that a lot of this was kicked off by like I pulled my sewing machine out to make face masks, and then I just kept sewing, and it was great. I think I also made this top at that time, which I didn't think that I liked very much. Putting it back on again for this try on, I don't think it's terrible. The thing that I did with this that was a little bit harder was I tried to make the sleeves fit flush. I didn't want them to be puffed sleeves. So you can kind of tell they aren't quite perfect because it actually is really hard to draft a sleeve cap that fits well on your own. And I did look up some tutorials about how to do that. But overall, like from 2020, I did make some really nice things that I'm proud of and do actually wear. So then moving into 2021, I wasn't, again, not sewing a ton. I did pick up some like vintage children's patterns and made a couple dresses for my nieces and like a little jumpsuit, and just making them clothes that they could try and wear. And I think that kids' clothes are actually a really great way to grow your sewing skills, because they don't require a lot of fabric. I mean, the one thing, they're kind of small and finicky, but you can make them really quickly. They don't require a lot of fabric. They are pretty quick to make, and you can learn a lot of interesting skills. Pretty low risk if you make kids' clothes or doll clothes. I would say kids' clothes more than doll clothes. Doll clothes are like a little bit too small. But yeah, I really enjoyed making those. They turned out really cute. And then I think I did another self-drafted dress that wasn't great. This like faux wrap dress that I'll put here. It just doesn't fit right. I think I should have done like an actual draft dress and not a faux wrap dress. The collar doesn't quite lay flat, and there's some finishes on it that don't look great. And I'm not really sure what to do with this because the fabric is cute, but the dress did not turn out great. So I may just need to rip it apart and repurpose it for something else. But just kept experimenting, making things that worked, making things that didn't work. And then I would say 2022 was the year that I really started sewing much more seriously. At this point I had like a lot of fabric scraps from all of these projects and all of these different bed sheets and all of this. I just had like a lot of fabric laying around that I wasn't using, and a lot of fabric scraps, and I didn't want to throw them away because they were like decent sized scraps. So what I ended up doing was cutting all of these scraps into these little 2x2 squares, and I wanted to make a quilt out of them. So I started making this quilt. I have not finished making this quilt, but I have a lot of quilt blocks. And I started piecing the blocks together, and I'm thinking now that I'm gonna unpiece them and change the design a little bit, but I have a lot of pieced quilt blocks and probably some more scraps I could add to those quilt blocks that I really like and I'm really proud of. So I wanna keep working on that quilt. I started working on that quilt. I made some like small project bags with canvas and fabric scraps that I had. That was another good thing. Just like, how do you make a square bottom bag? Like looking up tutorials online and kind of freestyling these different bags with different closures, which I really liked. I made another self-drafted dress that again, I don't really like, but it was more practice. And then I really started like getting more serious about my sewing and actually buying patterns and making dresses a little bit more purposely. So I think the first one that I made was this dress, which is from a Style Arc pattern. I don't remember what the name of it is. And I made it with this bolt of fabric that I bought secondhand. I got like, I don't know, 8 yards of this fabric for like $10. And I made this dress, and actually when I first made it, I didn't really like it, and I have not worn it once. It was originally meant to be a long dress, and I cut it to be a little shorter because I think, again, the fabric was too stiff for a dress of that length, and I have not worn it. But trying it on for this try-on, I actually thought it was really cute. So maybe I will wear it out once. The thing I didn't like about it originally, I think, was that the colors are super saturated, and I didn't love how saturated they were. So I was thinking if I could like dilute some bleach and just like kind of fade the colors a little bit, but seemed a little risky. But now that I've tried it on again and like it, I think it's really cute. I just don't know if it maybe needs a lining, or just wear a slip underneath it, but I do think it's really cute, and I may actually wear it, give it a good steam, and wear it out sometime in the next couple of months, because it did turn out really cute. And I put a zipper in there. Like it was a good like step forward in my sewing journey of making that with the zipper. Yeah, and then I really started taking it more seriously with a couple of dresses that I made using patterns from Hubba Ding, which is probably one of my favorite pattern makers I found. I spent a lot of time like researching pattern makers and like trying to find patterns that I like, because there are a lot of lovely sewing patterns out there, but it's hard to find ones that are perfect for what you're looking for. And because for knitting, I rely really heavily on Ravelry to help me find patterns. And there's just not really a Ravelry equivalent for sewing patterns. There are so many wonderful independent sewing designers that I just don't know about. And so I did a lot of like reading blogs and looking on Instagram and like deep diving to find these pattern makers that I like. And I'll list them at the end, some of the ones that I like and have used and really enjoy. But it takes a lot more research, I would say, to find beautiful, lovely sewing patterns than it does to find knitting patterns. So, you know, I wish someone would make a Ravelry for sewing, but we'll get there eventually. So yeah, oh, I also forgot that back in 2021, I made this like shacket, which I can show you. I've started to take it apart and fix it, and it needs a lot of work, but I made this shacket that I kind of like mishmashed two patterns together. So I'm doing a lot of experimenting in 2021. 2022 was when I got serious. I started making the Hubba Ding dresses. So I've made two faye dresses by Hubba Ding, which I'll show you here. I made the floral one first, and you can see it's a little, I made it like pretty much exactly to pattern. It's a little longer, but I really like it. I really like this pattern. I wore this dress to my graduation from graduate school. I think it's really pretty, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I've worn it quite a few times. It's super loose and super flowy, and I really like it a lot. And I liked it so much that I made it again later on in the summer with this red and white gingham. And I have a little less of the fabric to work with, so I had to get creative, but I made it a little bit shorter. I like the length on the red one a lot. It just feels, I think this is a good example of pattern and fabric matching up well together because it's got the right amount of drape and flow. I love how this pattern, the tiers on the dresses are like perfect. They're not too tiered and not like, you know, they're like Goldilocks tiers. So I'm really happy with this pattern. I think it's pretty beginner friendly, the sleeves especially, because it's just like a really big voluminous sleeve. There's not a lot of like having to set things in super precisely. And yeah, it's fun. And there's like some facings and things that you can do to make it look nice. So I really recommend that pattern. I've also made another pattern from Hubba Ding called the Penelope dress, which I'll put here, which I wore to a wedding this year, and I'll put a picture of me wearing it as well. I made this with a blue cotton bed sheet, and it's kind of a thinner cotton, so it's not the same like stiffness as those percale cotton dresses that I tried to make before. It has a little bit, it's still 100% cotton, but it has a little bit more drape to it. And I think it really works well for this style because it's an A-line, so it does need a little bit more structure, and the ruffle on the neck needs that structure. This one was definitely more challenging to sew than the faye dress, just because of the construction of the yoke, and I think the instructions on the yoke were a little bit hard to follow in some places, especially when you're like putting the yoke and the ruffle and the rest of the body together. But beyond that, it was fine. You do have to ease the sleeves in a little bit more, but that was fine. And overall, like the yoke is kind of challenging, but then putting the sleeves together is super simple. And then it's just like a sheath, kind of like A-line skirt. So if you're looking for something to like step up from like simple tiered dresses into something a little more complex, this is probably a good one to try. There's also a top version of it, like you can just make it into a shirt, and I think I would be interested in doing that. There's a really cute picture on Instagram that I've seen of it that I probably have saved that I'll put here for you of the Penelope top in this like really pretty like gingham. It's like a large print gingham. I don't know if it's a linen or something, but I think a linen would be really nice for this. Or maybe just a different cotton. But yeah, I definitely want to make the top version of this, I think. It's just a great shirt pattern, or dress pattern and shirt pattern, and I really like it. There are more patterns from Hubba Ding that I want to make. I think she does a really good job of like making classic, just like kind of simple designs, but in an interesting way. So I really like that. And then the other thing that I made this year was a dress that I kind of hacked out of a pattern from Fibre Mood, and I think it's called the Honey Top. It's a button-up top with a collar and with a ruffle, and these like kind of ties on the sleeves, and I made it into a tiered dress. And I'm really proud of this, I think. And I haven't worn it because there are some mistakes. Something went wrong when I was attaching the collar, and it doesn't quite cover the whole button placket. So there's like a little unfinished edge that I'm not sure how to finish. I think I just need to tuck the seams under and hand sew it. So I just need to do that. And I have a whole box of stuff downstairs that some of which you've seen, some of which you haven't, of stuff that I just need to make like small tweaks to make it more wearable. And I just haven't gotten around to it yet because I do the same thing with my knitting. Like once you finish a project, you're like kind of ready to move on from it. But if the purpose of making my own clothes is to be sustainable, I need to not just have like a pile of stuff that I'm never going to wear because I haven't fixed it. So yeah, my honey top dress, I really like. I think it's so pretty. But I just need to actually wear it. So yeah, that one was also made from a duvet. It's like a little bit of a stiffer fabric, but I think it works for this style because of the like rigidness of the collar and the tiers and everything. I think it works really well. So yeah, that is a fibre mood pattern. I also really like their patterns. And then later in the summer, I started getting into making pants and shorts. So I used the Pomona pants and shorts pattern to make this pair of shorts with some leftover fabric that I had from another project I'll talk about in a second. I lengthened them a little bit, but they're just like a really comfortable pair of shorts. I made them towards the end of the summer, so I haven't worn them a ton. But I did that, and then I bought the fabric that I made them for. I bought on like a really clear, it was like $3 a yard or something, and I bought it to make the Anna Allen Clyde jumpsuit, I think, which I made when I had COVID. It was like the one thing that kept me sane when I was stuck in the house last summer. And I made it, and I don't love it. And this kind of brings me to a challenge that I have with sewing patterns, is picking the right size. So I think the reason I don't like, there's a couple reasons why I don't love this jumpsuit. One, it's because I think the leg is a little too short. I did the full length and it's still kind of cropped. So I wish that the leg was a little bit longer, and I could pull out the hem to make it a little bit longer, but it also is like really wide. So when I measured myself, I kind of fell like right at the top end of the medium range. And I'm always scared with sewing that my clothing is going to be too small, because the thing that I love knitting, because if you make a mistake or you want to change something about it, or you make it in the wrong size, or you finish an entire piece and you don't love it, like you can tear it out, like take the stitches out and reuse the yarn, and you haven't really lost anything. Like you may have a few more knots in your yarn than you did before, but like you can use exactly the same materials that you had before to make something brand new. The thing that I find challenging with sewing is that like once you've cut into your fabric, you are extremely limited on what you can then do with that fabric. So like if you've made a whole piece and you don't like it, there's only so much you can do to adapt that piece into a different piece. And if it's too small, like it's really hard to make modifications to make it slightly bigger without those modifications being really obvious. So I feel like I have a tendency to go for a size larger than I really need to go for, and that means that my pieces aren't fitting me the way that I want them to. So this jumpsuit is a really good example, is that I think I should have gone for one size smaller and it wouldn't be quite so wide. And I might have actually wear it. I've never worn this jumpsuit again because I don't like the fit out of it. I think it's really wide, and I think I'm just gonna end up using it as like a gardening overalls, or like painting when we're doing some renovations in our home soon and we're going to be painting. So I'll just use it as like my gardening and like painting and DIY project outfit, because I don't feel like I can fix it to a point that it will be like great. And I could take all the seams out and like make it smaller and everything, but I just don't know that I love it enough to do that. And another thing with Anna Allen patterns is that there's so much top stitching that it's just like such a pain to pull all this top stitching out, all the seams out. I've serged a lot of these things as well. So like the seams are close, it just becomes cumbersome. So I think I'm just gonna end up making this like a workwear piece. But yeah, that was kind of like probably one of my bigger fails of the year, which we will get to more in a minute. I started I made a pair of Pomona pants, which you'll see here. And I was really tied, but Penelope? Pomona. Are they the Pomona pants? Yes, they are the Pomona pants. And I was trying to choose between making a pair of Pomona pants or Persephone pants at the time that I got this fabric. And I went for the Pomona pants, and I now wish that I had gone for the Persephone pants. I made these pants, I have not worn them. I think it's because the elastic is a bit too thin. I need to put a thicker elastic in the band, and I think they would lay more nicely. Like the elastic isn't wide enough. And they're cute, but I think they would be cuter as a pair of Persephone pants. And this gets to my Persephone pants journey. So I have, like I said, the shacket that I made earlier, I bought a bunch, like so much of this wool, 100% wool fabric at Goodwill, like 2020, maybe early 2021. I bought this fabric. I have 3 different colors of like 8 yards of this beautiful wool. I think it's like a suiting or kind of like coating material. And I decided I had some navy blue, and I was going to make a pair of Persephone pants out of it because I love a good wool pant. And a navy blue Persephone pant sounded amazing. So I spent a lot of time working on these pants. I chose the size, and like if you've ever made the Persephone pants, which I can show you a picture of, they are like they're like the Madewell pants, the like high waist, wide leg pants that are kind of, they're very popular. It's a very popular style. It's very trendy. I think the style is amazing, and I think it looks really great on a lot of people. And they're so cute, but you have to do like the button fly, which takes a lot of time, and the waistband, and like easing all the, there's so much top stitching. Like it's a very labor intensive garment to make. I've now made these spoiler alert, I've now fully completed 3 pairs of these pants, and they take like upwards of 20 hours just for, they take a lot of time to sew. They've taken me at least 10 hours of sewing time probably. And that's like with making mistakes and ripping things out and having to redo stuff and make kind of fit adjustments, but they are very time intensive. Like there's just a lot of small details that you have to do. And every time I've made them, it's gotten faster, but the first time, especially with a thicker wool material, it took me a really long time. And I wanted them to look nice, and I spent a lot of time getting them to fit, and I finally finished them. I put them in the washing machine, and they shrunk because I did not pre-wash my fabric. They shrunk like significantly. I could still wear them, but the fit was not right. They were way too tight in the hips. I have kind of like a body shape where I have like my waist and my hips, and then I have like a hip dip and then like pretty larger thighs, and they were just like stuck to my body. You could see that shape that I don't love about my body too well. And I was so disappointed because I had spent so much time trying to like get the waistband. The waistband especially has been like a drama point for me with my Persephone pants, but I'd spent all this time trying to get it perfect, and they shrunk, and I was devastated. So I ended up giving them to a friend of mine who sews, and I don't know if she's used them or tailored them to fit her better or what, but she has them now, and I'm still like so upset about that. So then I took a break for a while from sewing because of that. I was just like so upset. But then I decided to try them again, and I got this brown cotton twill curtain from the Goodwill bins. And it wasn't a ton of fabric. It was probably like a yard, maybe a yard and a half of fabric of this like, it's not like cotton, it's cotton twill. So it's like kind of like canvasy, but not super heavy weight. And I was like, I'm going to use these to make another pair of Persephone pants. And thankfully, like I washed this curtain beforehand, and it was a curtain, so it had been washed and used before. And I made the pants, and I made them, I think I've made most of my Anna Allen patterns in the size 10. And I made them in the size 10, and they were just still too big. And they didn't fit right. So I made them like in October, and I was like just annoyed because they were too big they were too loose in the hips area. Like it gave me that kind of like, you know, when you sit down in a pair of pants that's too big and it gives you like a diaper kind of look, it gave me that. And they didn't fit right. And I was so annoyed. I didn't want to have to tear out all the top stitching and do everything again. So I just put them away, and I came back to them probably in like late November or early December. And I was like, I'm going to fix these pants. I'm going to make them work. I just made the darts a little bit bigger and like just made the waist a little more tapered, and they fit so much better. And I'm so proud of them, and I wear them all the time, and I love them. So, I mean, if I haven't already shown them to you, here they are. They really do fit really nicely, hang really nicely. The weight of the fabric is a really good match for the pattern and the style. And I just think they're great, and they're not perfect. Like the button fly is a little wonky and the waistband's a little wonky, but like overall, I'm really proud of these pants, and I wear them a lot, and I really like the fit of them. And then they like filled a hole in my wardrobe that I didn't know I had. I just think they're great. So like that's probably one of my prouder sewing projects, is these pair of pants that I've now worn a ton. And I loved them and wore them so much that I decided to make them again in a white, because I'd been looking for a nice pair of like kind of white, off-white, wide leg pants for a long time, like jeans basically. And they're expensive. Like jeans are expensive, and it's hard to find a style that you like. And I wasn't sure if I wanted the hem to have like a raw hem or a finished hem or whatever. So when I was at my mom's house at Christmas time, there is a discount fabric store near her. And I bought white. It was perfect. I found this off-white cotton twill, like decently heavyweight fabric that I bought to make Persephone pants, and I was so excited about them. And I brought them home, and I cut the pants, and I made them, and the fit was great. A little loose, but good. And so I wore them quite a few times and put them in the wash on cold, didn't put them in the dryer, and they shrunk because I did not pre-wash the fabric. I have now learned my lesson, and I will always pre-wash my fabric. I understand, I've heard mixed messages about pre-washing fabric, and I think you mostly don't pre-wash for quilting, and you should always pre-wash for garments. I've heard that pre-washing for quilting can be bad because it like messes with the warp a little bit. But from now on, if I'm sewing clothes, I will be pre-washing the fabric because I just cannot go through the emotional turmoil of this happening to me again. So I washed the pants. Thankfully, they didn't shrink too much width-wise. Like they still fit my waist and everything really well, which you'll see because I'm wearing them here, but they shrunk a lot lengthwise, and they were like at the perfect length before, so I was really annoyed because they turned out way more cropped than after shrinking. They were way too cropped. So I pulled out the hem. Luckily, these pants have like quite a wide hem. So I pulled out the hem and then kind of, I basically like sewed more fabric onto the bottom and folded it up and then sewed it again to make the wide hem, which you'll see, that's how they look here. And I think it might just be too much fabric around the base, so I'm not sure. I need to wash them again because I haven't washed them since I made that tweak. I need to wash them again just to see if they will hang a little bit better once the fabric is all kind of clean. And the fabric I washed the fabric, here we go. So when I added the fabric on the bottom to the hem to make it wider, I had washed that fabric first. So all of the fabric has been washed once, but I need to wash the pants again just to get everything to settle in. But basically, I figured out I made them work. I still wear these white pants all the time and I love them very much. And I'm, again, really proud of these. And I probably will be making more Persephone pants because the cut really works for my body type. The style really works for my style. And I just think they're lovely. So yes, that is my Persephone pant drama. But yeah, I feel like I've now just been rambling, but now you've kind of seen a lot of the pieces that I've put together, lots of dresses, a few pairs of pants. And overall, like you can see that I've come quite a long way over the past couple of years in my sewing, and I feel much more proud of my sewing abilities now. Like even just between the brown Persephone pants and the white Persephone pants, like the darts are much cleaner and the top stitching is much cleaner and everything just looks like a little bit better. And I think that's what I'm enjoying so much about sewing lately, is that like I've gotten to a point with knitting where like there are not as many new skills for me to learn. There are new skills that I haven't done before, but I've gotten to a point where I'm like pretty competent in a lot of knitting skills. Whereas in sewing, I just feel like I'm at that point where I was with knitting like a year or two ago, where I'm learning so much and seeing like significant progress from piece to piece to piece. And it's really satisfying. So yes, all of that to say is this is kind of like a look at my sewing journey. And as we wrap up, I'll talk to you about a couple pattern makers that I really like. So I mentioned Anna Allen. Patterns are lovely. I really enjoy them. I think I want to make an Anthea blouse this year. The problem is that my machine has a really bad buttonholer and I hate doing buttons. So anything with buttons is kind of a pain, but anyway, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And maybe at some point I will invest in a new sewing machine, but I just feel like my machine works fine. And so it feels silly to buy a new one, but I could give it to someone else. So maybe in the next year I will invest in a better sewing machine. But anyway, I really like Anna Allen patterns. I really like Hubba Ding patterns. I like fibre mood patterns, which is my honey top that I made into a dress. I have a couple other patterns that I'm working on that are kind of like works in progress where the fabric is cut out and I've like started the sewing process but haven't finished it. I feel like I'm really bad about sewing whips. Like I have quite a few that I need to finish. I also made a pair of pomona pants in this linen that I will show you. And I'm making a matching button up top. I kind of wanted to have like a matching linen set. The top that I'm making is the Noah shirt from the fabric store, which is a free pattern. And it's a good pattern, but there's not a lot of instructions. So it's a little bit more advanced. But anyway, back to my sewing, my fibre mood patterns. I'm making the hortence dress, which has ruching on it, which I think, or like smocking, which is really pretty and challenging, that I'm kind of in the middle of that. I also want to make the maude dress, which I can put a picture of here. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for me to like continue with that. I also, so I said fibre mood, Hubba Ding, Anna Allen. Tailoring has lots of nice patterns. They're a little bit more expensive, but lots of good patterns, and they do quite a few sales. So yeah, I'd say those are my favorites so far. There's a lot of other patterns that I like. Peppermint Magazine has great patterns. And then there's like lots of people that I follow on on Instagram that I like Tilly and the Buttons and Friday Pattern Company and Matchy Sewing Club, and is that what they're called? I think so. So I think the best way to find patterns for sewing is on Instagram. Just like looking up people like Me Made May hashtags, or looking at designers, finding people you like and following them and seeing what patterns they make, and then just like going down a rabbit hole basically. I have a whole saved folder on my Instagram of sewing patterns that I like and people's projects. So overall, I'd say it requires a little more research and trial and error, and it's a little scarier, I would say, than knitting, but I found sewing very rewarding in the past couple of years, and I'm excited to keep sewing for myself and for others, but mostly for myself. So yeah, that is probably going to be it for me today. This has already been much longer of a video than I expected it to be, so I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about my sewing journey, seeing some of the things that I've made, hearing about trial and errors and mistakes and progress, and like learn from me, pre-wash your fabric. But yeah, overall it's been a joy and I'm really enjoying it. I just haven't been sewing as much lately because my sewing machine is in my uninsulated basement and it's really cold. So hopefully, as I always end up picking up my sewing or doing more sewing when the weather warms up. So I think as spring and summer come through, I'm going to be sewing more, and I'm excited to be sewing more. And I hope that this video inspired you to do a little bit of sewing, or to maybe consider trying some sewing if you've never tried it before. A couple other people that I enjoy that I watch online that also sew are Jonathan Stays, who also talks about knitting, and Anna from Brook Willow also does sewing. So if you're looking for some other people to kind of look into about sewing, I know Rebecca from the Crayabea also does some sewing, and she maybe has a video or two about her sewing projects. So definitely check those out if you're looking for other people to follow that are in the sewing and knitting, kind of straddle both. I'm not super, I haven't watched as many people who mostly do sewing content. So if you have sewing content creator recommendations, please leave them in the comments down below for me. If you have any other questions about things I've spoken about today, also feel free to leave that in the comments. And for now, that is going to be it. So I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you again so much for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you again soon.